Hi, everyone. We're going to give it just another minute to get a few more people on the line, and we'll start the discussion soon. Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us for our webinar today. Your top performing remote workforce is 5 steps away. This is presented by iCIMS and our partner eSkill. I will be your moderator today. My name is Alexandra Jenko. I am the Partner Marketing Associate here at iCIMS. Just a few need to knows from me. The webinar is being recorded and will be distributed following the live date. Feel free to share the recording with any of your colleagues that maybe were unable to join today. Also, if you have any questions that arise during the discussion, feel free to add those in the Q&A box on the right hand of your screen. For our speakers today, we have Gazman Kalikovic from iCIMS. He is our Product Marketing Manager, and Ethan Painter, Client Success Manager at eSkill. For today's agenda, we will discuss how remote hiring is shaping the workforce. Then we'll go over the 5 steps to build a strong remote hiring experience and how technology is innovating around remote hiring needs. So I'll just jump right into the discussion, passing it over to Gazman.
Thank you, Alex, and hello, everyone. Again, my name is Gazman Kalikovic, Product Marketing Manager here at iCIMS. And I'm really excited to walk you through some of the steps your organization can take to improve and optimize your remote hiring practices. But before we dive into the details, I just want to point out some important stats related to some of the trends we're seeing in remote hiring. And the reality is, remote hiring is increasing at a rapid clip, which may not come as a huge surprise, but according to Business Insider, half of all employees will be remote workers in just a few years' time, which is a pretty eye-opening statistic that really reveals the breadth of this trend and this change in the way we think about work. And there are a number of factors, I'd say 3 key drivers that are really causing this surge in remote hiring. The first of those is really a more competitive recruiting landscape that is pushing employers to extend their search for qualified candidates outside of their immediate geographical areas. So the vast majority of organizations are now engaging in more strategic talent acquisition practices, and they're now also using a variety of new and more advanced technologies to source and recruit top talent. We've also been in a candidates market, right, for some time now, and organizations are scooping up top talent fairly rapidly. So it's really these combined competitive and market pressures, along with the realization that top talent doesn't necessarily need to be confined to a specific geographical area, that are really a key cause behind some of the ramp up we're seeing in remote hiring practices. Remote hiring can also be seen as a function of an organization having a national or multinational reach, right? Companies want to be sure that their customers, no matter where they're located, have access to the resources and the information they need to effectively interact with their business. So depending on the nature of your business, right? If you're, for example, a company who's headquartered in the East Coast, you may very well have customers or prospective customers in, say, California, right? So you want to be sure that you're offering those customers support that's available on their terms, on their schedule, or an account manager who's physically nearby in case issues arise. So it's really these types of scenarios and business requirements that are also creating the need for a remote workforce. And finally, I would certainly be remiss not to mention that the role of millennials and the role that they're playing in this story. In numerous surveys that I've seen and even been a part of, millennials tend to value flexibility, right, including the ability to work remotely, in some cases as much as or more than compensation. So millennials have really brought about this kind of culture shift in the way we think about work, and organizations are quickly catching on and following suit accordingly. So, it's clear that with remote hiring becoming such a prevalent and in many cases necessary practice, it's not only important that you consider a remote hiring strategy, but also have a plan in place around attracting the right remote candidates to your organization, especially considering, that 3/4 of remote employees earn over $65,000 a year. So with this clear tie to your bottom line, you really want to be sure to avoid bad hires and attract the right candidates through a great hiring experience.
Gaz, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, sure, absolutely, Ethan.
Hi, everybody. This is Ethan. Ethan Painter with eSkill. I just wanted to kind of hit home real quick on the millennial part. As a fellow millennial, this was very important to me during my initial job search. And Gaz kind of hit on it. Is flexibility. Flexibility is very key for this new job candidate pool. We want to be able to have as much flexibility in our life and on the job as possible, because to us, that's our comfort zone. Having that flexibility is, provides that comfort and really provides a good balance for us. So always take into consideration flexibility when, looking to hire some of these, millennial job pools.
Excellent. Thanks, Ethan, for that. So that being said, looking at the drivers, and understanding that remote hiring is really increasing as a practice, let's talk about how we can improve the remote hiring experience, both on the recruitment side as well as the candidate side, to ensure that you're hiring the most qualified candidates. What are some of the steps you need to take or processes you need to implement to attract top remote talent? So the first step to creating a great remote hire experience is really defining what your ideal remote employee actually looks like. This may seem like a given, but hiring a great remote worker really requires a certain level of trust and certain unique skills that really go beyond typical new hire requirements. So this makes it really essential to sit down with a hiring manager and leaders across the organization to define what exactly remote talent at your organization should be measured on. So you'll see a list that was given by Forbes outlining some of the suggested traits you should be looking for when considering remote hires. And you'll notice that many of those are soft skills that can be quite difficult to gauge without physical in-person interviews. So it's important that as part of the hiring process, you really define which of these traits you feel are most important for that particular role, that you attach a key metric to each of those traits, and effectively score candidates against those traits as they move through the hiring process. And by really boiling down this process into a science, you can get a greater sense of a candidate's fit around these traits in lieu of interacting with them in person. And Ethan will actually go through some of the screening processes you can use to gauge this information later on in the presentation. But in the meantime, Ethan, I'm wondering, based on your experience, if you have some insight into any specific traits or skills that you notice are being tested for more than others maybe in remote hiring situations.
Yeah, guys, that's a great question. And it seems to be, there's kind of 3 core traits that a lot of my clients focus on in this arena. And those 3 are teamwork, project management, and time management. These are definitely very crucial for these types of hiring situations. Somebody that is able to not only manage their time, but manage the flow of that designated project they may be working on without without outside influence is going to be probably the number one thing that's going to determine their success. So being able to measure those and find those out on the front end are going to be crucial. And then also being able to, when I say teamwork, it's not your traditional teamwork, because they might not necessarily be around their fellow employees, whatever it may be. So they kind of have to be adaptable to that teamwork and be able to demonstrate teamwork in different ways than the norm. As it relates to hard skills. What are some of the hard skills that we look for? It's really going to depend on the project. It's going to vary from project to project. So there's really no set, no set skills that we tend to see across the board. But I will say, whatever skills that are important to you, we need to be able to identify those on the front end, because we're going to need those people to come in and start rolling on day one on that specific project.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ethan, for that insight. Really appreciate it. So moving on to the next slide here, and kind of the second step of creating a great hiring experience is really making sure you make a strong first impression for your candidates. So, at the end of the day, right, you're selling them a product, and that product is your business and the great benefits and growth opportunities you have to offer them. And if it becomes quickly evident that they can't order your product or apply to your job or find the right information they need around your product or your job, they'll ultimately take their business elsewhere. And that's what I've personally found myself doing plenty of times throughout my own job search experience. So I remember, one experience in particular where I visited an employer's job portal, I completed their application, and then I went to submit the application, and literally nothing would happen. I couldn't for the life of me get the application to actually submit. So I decided to try again on a different browser, and I found I had to complete their lengthy application all over again. So, at that point, I decided, well, it's just not worth the effort to go through that process again. And this is the exact experience you want to avoid, right? You want to avoid that 59% application drop-off rate you see cited on the screen. So with that said, what can we do, right, aside from making sure the application submit button works, to make sure candidates have the best experience? For one, we should be meeting them where they live. So with everyone on their phones, a mobile optimized career page and job application, along with an ability to apply to a job from a mobile device, really ensures a more convenient process for the candidate and allows you to capture those candidates on the go more easily. The second part of this is offering up an automated offering up automated follow-up messages. It is also really important, and a point that I really can't stress enough. So I'm sure quite a few of us on this call have applied to jobs in the past and heard nothing from the employer for weeks or even months, which doesn't necessarily give the candidate confidence in their decision to apply and potentially work for that organization. So making sure you have some level of automation built into your recruiting process, automated emails, for example, that keep candidates posted about their status within the hiring process, is really essential for providing the best possible experience. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Ethan, and he's going to walk you through the final 3 steps.
All right, thank you, guys. Yeah, so this kind of brings us to the next couple steps as it relates to the screening process, and how can we innovate this screening process? Traditionally, I kind of went through this process during my first job as well. Is traditionally you're going to bring somebody in for an interview, you're going to decide kind of right then and there whether you like them, and choose to move them on without really knowing any background. You have a couple questions, and yeah, they answered them to your liking, so they're going to make it to the next round, and it's going to kind of go through that until eventually they get hired. I'm here to tell you that that's quickly becoming a thing of the past. The traditional face-to-face interviews are, one, time consuming, and two, they're not going to be as spot on as using some of these other tools. There's always going to be that person that says they can recognize talent from a mile away, and then sure enough, that candidate will become an employee and they flame out in 6 months. So that's, when we talk about innovating our screening process, it's kind of twofold. We want to make it easy on ourselves and streamline the process, and we also want to use it in our advantage to make better hiring decisions. And so there's kind of a couple ways to do this. First being online job simulations. So these online job simulations, they have positives of their own as well. So they're very realistic, and they can give you quantifiable measurements to a specific position. So that always comes in handy if you have kind of a very technical job position. You want to be able to make sure that they can work in your system and perform the task that you need them to do. So that's where online job simulations come in, play a critical part. There's also customized skills test. And when you think about whether or not to use a customized skills test, you need to kind of ask yourself, what are some of the skills that we need the candidate to come in on day one and be able to perform? They can't have success on the job unless they can perform these skills, X, Y, and Z. So once you identified those skills, then we can test on them. And, they can be multiple skills, it can be a handful of skills, whatever that may be to, correlate to on-the-job success. So when you think about skills testing, think about immediate success. Typically, we're going to look at, will they be able to perform in the first 30, 60, 90 days? And a skills test is most likely going to give us that information. The third being a behavioral assessment. So behavioral assessment has a little bit more of a long-term view. We want to be able to see, of course, we want to be able to know if they can come in and do the job, but we want to see, are they going to mesh well in the environment? If they're a remote worker, are they going to be able to handle being a remote worker? Are they going to be able to, keep themselves on task? Are they going to have great time management? And so we can use a behavioral assessment to, kind of see, kind of peel back the layers of that person and see who they really are, and if that's going to match up with on-the-job success. So, skills testing is going to be very short-term and, project short-term abilities. Behavioral assessments are going to project long-term. Are they going to stay with the company 6 months, 6 years, and beyond? And that's kind of where, we decide on which tool to use. So when you're looking at these three simulations, skills test, behavioral assessments, you're not really sure, what works for us, ask yourself what you're looking to accomplish. You just need somebody that can come in and do the job, short term, or are you wanting somebody that's going to, be a long-term employee and make a career at your company? Alex, you can move on to the next one. All right, number 4, staying top of mind. How do you guys, stay at the top of mind of your candidates? I attended a conference last year, and they had a panel, for lack of better terms, of millennials. They were fresh out of college. They were either in the middle of the job, looking for a job, or they just completed the job process. And they provide a lot of insight on, what was important to them. We have a couple of statistics here. It says 76% of people say not hearing back from an employer is more frustrating than not hearing from someone after a first date, and 86% find it beneficial to receive text messages. This was definitely relayed on that panel. They said one of the number one things for them was, feeling that they were wanted and valued. They wanted, follow-up conversations, just to, even if it wasn't good news, they just wanted to be informed and feel like they weren't just another number in the candidate pool. And so that's very crucial, when you have these large candidate pools, and obviously not gonna be able to touch everybody, but once you kind of narrow it down to those people that you see have potential to work at your company, then you want to definitely kind of go that extra mile with them, because that's what they're going to want. They're going to want that interaction, kind of that soft touch, to make it feel like you really want them to work for you, and that as long as you project that, then they're going to feel that, and it's going to be good for everybody. A couple of things on the side, 67% during the application answer questions and confirmation were completed. You can use 57% for interview scheduling, and then 57% of people learning steps after being hired. They really appreciate that, even if it is just a simple text, just that some sort of communication to make them feel wanted.
Yeah, Ethan, and I just want to add kind of a short anecdote on my end. So full disclosure, I've only been at iCIMS for all of about 2 whopping months, so I'm fresh out of the hiring process and interview process. And one of the things that maybe it's kind of a shameless plug for iCIMS, but just kind of going over my experience, when I started the interview process, the hiring process, I got a text message from someone, and it looked like a number that was in my area, and I noticed really quickly that it was actually my recruiter who was texting me and kind of updating me around the recruiting process. So that was something that me as a candidate I really appreciated, kind of always staying abreast of what's happening, and that constant communication was really helpful for me. And it was through a mode of communication that was also most convenient to me, right? I mean, I check my emails on occasion, my personal emails, there's a lot of spam that goes in. There may not be a high likelihood of me opening certain emails, and if I do, it may take some time for me to open them. So with text messages, I have my phone around me at all times. So, thinking about incorporating those touch points, like you said, Ethan, that are convenient to candidates, I think is really, really important.
Yes, I agree, Gaz. And one last thing, don't be afraid to ask. Ask how they prefer to communicate. Some may say, yeah, give me a call, or some say, hey, message me on LinkedIn. Don't be afraid to ask, and so that way you can use that to your advantage. All right. So our fifth point, bringing onboarding online. So, the point of, doing everything online is, it's 2019. That's where everything's at. Everything's online. Everybody's using their computer. Everybody's using their phone. And that's, where we spend the majority of our day. So you definitely want to, offer your remote new hires a dedicated portal with access to a couple of things: a personalized welcome message, and interactive content. This always depends on the company, but, they really want to, make the candidate feel welcome, and they're gonna have videos, and they might send you, a link every day, for the first couple of weeks, whatever it is, just to make them feel included. Information about their new team, their role and responsibilities. This is always good to know because it's right there in front of the candidate, or in front of the now new hire. And so they can constantly see, what's expected of me, and, they can kind of take that as they go day by day. And then also giving them access to electronic benefits, direct deposit, 401k, tax forms, things of that nature. So this is kind of I'm going to tie this in a little bit to the previous slide. And it's all about establishing a sense of inclusion from the very beginning. Especially if you're working remotely, you kind of feel, you want to say, sometimes you feel like an outcast, but you just feel like you're missing out. You feel like you're just missing something. I work remotely, actually. There are times where we have meetings, and I always have to dial in, and everybody else is in an office, and sometimes I just wish I was in that office. So a lot of times I'm like, hey, can we Skype? Can we have a video conference just so I can see everybody and feel like I'm there? And it all comes back to feeling included. You want to make them feel included and welcomed, as an employee, feel included and welcomed, as part of your company. And so just, it's different from company to company and what that means and how you choose to include them, but just be mindful of it, that is a very big deal to remote workers.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ethan, for that overview. So we went over quite a bit here, so I'd like to just briefly recap our discussion. So the first big takeaway here, and I alluded to this earlier, is that recruiters are selling their companies to their candidates, right? And anytime you're selling something, you want to be sure the customer, in this case the candidate, has the best possible experience in interacting with your brand and your business. So making sure you optimize some of those online experiences, whether through your career portal or through a steady cadence of automated touch points with candidates, is critically important. We also talked about the importance of defining and measuring against key behavioral, technical, and cultural markers, right, to ensure that you are, in fact, hiring the best remote candidates to avoid costly turnover, and how different tests triggered throughout the hiring process can really help measure against some of those markers. And finally, we know that remote work is gaining in popularity, so we really should think about incorporating automation, right, to ensure we're efficiently moving those candidates through the recruiting pipeline to ultimately avoid drop-off.
Great. So thank you, Gaz and Ethan, for your thoughts and insight on our 5 steps for your remote workforce. We want to hear from you guys now. Let us know your thoughts on our 5 tips. Define your ideal remote employee, make a great first impression, innovate your screening process, stay top of mind, and bring onboarding online. So feel free to add your questions. We see a few coming in on the side, and I will give them to Gaz and Ethan. So let's see. The first one, this one's for Ethan at eSkill. So when thinking about hiring for short-term project, would you suggest posting an opening for the project or for the job?
Thank you, Alex. Great question. I would say project. And I know somebody might, you might be looking for some deep philosophical reason, but I'm gonna keep it pretty simple. If you were to if you're looking to hire an admin position, whatever that may look like, you wouldn't want to then, post looking for an account. You don't want to upload an accounting job description, an accounting position job description. That sounds better. Just post for what you're looking for, because if you were to post for the full job or for a job, then, once that project is done, then, that candidate might have, they might be like, okay, well, I'm just going to stay here and we're going to keep going to the next project. If that's not the case, then you don't want to lead them awry. So, my advice is to post for what you're looking for.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ethan. So another question that came in, more on the application process, so I'm going to pass this over to Gaz. How long should an application process or an application take the candidate to complete to avoid that large drop-off that we saw on one?
Yeah, excellent question. Kind of getting into the science a little bit here. So based on the data that we have available across our customer base and their candidates, we've found that an application process that's 10 minutes or shorter it really yields the lowest amount of drop-off rate. So anything above that, and you'll start to see some candidate fatigue, and you'll start to see a higher drop-off rate after that 10-minute mark. What I will say, though, what I'll add to that is, the application length is certainly one component that factors into a drop-off rate, but they may be even falling off before they even get to the job application, right? They may be falling off when they get to the actual job post and they read the description. They may find, oh, well, this doesn't necessarily include all the information that I'm looking for. Or there may not be enough information on the actual career portal around the company culture or just information for them to kind of soak in. So I think it's important to not only consider the application length, but it's also important to make sure that you're providing enough description within your job descriptions themselves, making sure you provide the candidates everything they need, and making sure you put some time and effort into really revamping and revitalizing your career portal page to make sure that candidates have a true understanding of what it is that your company has to offer.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Sure.
One more question. I see. How can we confirm culture is a top priority for a remote workforce?
Yeah, so this kind of alludes back to the previous response I gave, which is, making sure upfront that you communicate to the candidate what your culture is, at your organization. So again, going back to my experience with iCIMS, iCIMS does a really great job of promoting their core competencies. There are a certain set of core competencies that, every employee is expected to have at iCIMS, and those are posted front and center on the career portal. They have videos to go along with supporting some of those core competencies, videos showcasing kind of the work life at iCIMS. So, if you want to attract candidates who are a good culture fit, then you need to make sure that you're communicating to them early on what that expectation is, what your culture actually is, so that they realize right from the beginning that, this would be a good fit for them.
Yeah, and guys, just to pony off of you on that one. You kind of talk about, on the front end, trying to identify what's for them and, some of the resources you can provide them. And then kind of secondarily, I always kind of resort back to a behavioral assessment. I believe that a behavioral assessment didn't tell you anything. So, you can kind of couple it with, providing them the information, but then also, extracting a little bit of information from them. Once you kind of peel back those layers of a person, those behavioral assessments are going to be able to tell you, does this matter to them? Or are they just there to collect a check? Are they just there to, put their head down and get some results for you guys? So, again, I'm probably a little bit biased, but I always lean toward behavioral assessments that it's going to tell you what you need to know.
Great. Thank you, Ethan. We got another question in, so if you have more questions, please feel free to send them in. Another one, which is a little follow-up to the application process, is what about length of process from application to hire? If you as a recruiter are remaining engaged and set expectations, is there such thing as too long of a process?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question, taking it kind of a step further. So what I would say is the short answer is no. I don't think there's a too long. I think that as long as you are, like you said, setting those expectations up front and keeping within constant communication with that with that candidate. I don't think there's necessarily a too long, within reason, of course, right? 6 months go by, that might be too long. But, hearkening back to iSIMS core competencies, one of those is transparency, right? So I think as long as you're transparent, you're keeping in constant communication with that candidate, I think within reason, there isn't necessarily a too long, but really great question.
Great, thank you, guys. I think at this moment, unless anyone else wants to throw another question in, we are all set on questions. I do want to also PSA, this is being recorded. I will send out the recording, and I will also send out the webinar presentation too, for stats and all the great information that was in the presentation. And with that said, we will move on.
Great. So before we end our discussion today, I just want to give you all a brief overview of some of the solutions iSIMS and eSkill offer that can really help you optimize your remote as well as your total hiring experience. And iSIMS offers a best-of-breed solution that really enables organizations to manage their entire recruiting and hiring process within an end-to-end talent acquisition suite of solutions. And this end-to-end solution includes tools to engage and nurture candidates through Text Recruit, which is our mobile engagement platform, as well as Connect, our candidate relationship management platform. You can also manage applicants through the hiring process using the Recruit applicant tracking system, manage the entire offer process through the offer solution, and efficiently bring new hires into your organization with the Onboard solution. And along with our end-to-end talent acquisition platform, we also support a robust integration ecosystem that we call Unify, which allows our customers to shop a marketplace of over 230 partner products and leverage pre-built activatable connectors to seamlessly integrate iSIMS with partner solutions that can really help optimize the talent acquisition experience. And to briefly just expand on the marketplace, the Unify marketplace a bit further, one of the things that really compelled iSIMS to create this deeply integrated partner ecosystem is the fact that recruiting organizations are using an average of about 24 different recruiting technologies. And the reality is the last thing recruiters want to do is spend time toggling between different systems to find the information that they need related to a candidate, or toggling back and forth to order and view assessments for specific candidates, which is why we've partnered with over 230 partners who specialize in sourcing and screening and employee management solutions whose functionalities can plug into the iSIMS platform to support an end-to-end recruiting process. And many of these integrations are pre-built and out of the box, meaning you won't need to spend months going through a costly implementation process to get up and running. So eSkill is actually one of those partners we work with that offer this pre-built activatable integration with iSIMS, giving recruiters the ability to order, to track, and view candidate assessments right from within the iSIMS applicant tracking system. So with that, a good lead-in for Ethan, who will talk a bit about eSkill.
That was a great transition, Gaz. I'll give you that one. So this is kind of, for those of you that aren't familiar with eSkill, this is just kind of, the scope of eSkill, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about, the functionality and products that we have. eSkill has been around for about 15 years. We have a pretty robust library, over 600 subjects with 60,000 questions. In terms of scope, as I mentioned again, customer serve 4,400. I have clients that have 10 employees, and I have, big global clients, and some of those names you guys will be able to recognize. Customer tests that we've created and that are in the system, 55,000. Candidates evaluated, 4 million. Choice of standard tests, 650. So there's kind of two options. I'll talk a little bit about this on the next slide. There's two options with eSkill. You can pull these standard tests that we've already created. So we've done a lot of analysis and candidate evaluations to put together standard tests that we deem are relevant for a specific job position. So for example, we have a standard test for an accounting position, or we have a standard test for an admin position. So, we've put tests together that we deem are going to help you identify candidates that will show success in that position, regardless of company. And then we also have the ability to create your own custom tests. So you can always lean on our standard test because it's very quick, it's already ready made, and you can deploy it within 5 minutes. Or we also help you put together your own test and create custom tests for you. So maybe you want to, there's certain subjects you want to test on, we can pull all those together. If you want to test on Excel, Word, and PowerPoint all in one, we can do that, pull it all together, and you're good to go. We've also published about 496 articles, and that's in counting. We try to always keep you guys informed, keep our clients, kind of up to date with the landscape as it relates to testing, validation, white papers, or whatever that may be. And so eSkill, why are we here? I'll just go ahead and read this. Our goal is to develop the best-in-class screening for recruitment and selection. We help you manage high volume of candidates across geographic locations. We put our experience with large-scale, one too many.
Sorry about that. The animation just happened.
You're good. We put our experience with large-scale implementation into impacting your performance metrics. So, kind of what does this mean? The beauty of eSkill is that it allows you to test remotely. You can also test on site. I have clients that do test on site, and we have a way to deploy a test on site, and we have ways to allow the candidate to take the test in their living room. So we do offer multiple ways of testing. As I mentioned, a fully customizable test. So you can either use standard test, you can either use a fully customizable test, you can do a little bit of both. Sometimes we'll start with the standard test as a baseline, and we'll kind of add and subtract as we see fit. One of the new products that has come out recently, in fact, we're I think at the 3-week mark since we launched, is voice and video interview questions. So what the voice and video interview questions is, it allows you to ask a candidate questions through our system and record their response, either just voice or just video. So I'll give you a little bit of background on how this came about. One of our clients actually came to us and saying, hey, we need some way to validate that the person taking the test is who they say they are. And so they wanted to be able to capture a picture of their driver's license, passport, some sort of identification that says, hey, the person taking this test is who's going to show up in a week or two to our office for an interview, whatever that may be. So that's kind of how it all got started. Well, obviously we kind of sat back and thought, well, there's actually a couple of other things we can do with this. An interview questions being probably number one behind candidate verification. And so I have clients now that are using our platform as an interview. Instead of bringing them in and taking up time, they can just deploy this test. The candidate will update or upload their answers, and you're off and running. You can have as many questions as you need in there. There's really no limit. I would say typically we're looking at 6 to 7, 8 questions, whatever your typical interviewing process is. That is now available to do through our system. One of the kind of hallmarks of eSkill is our simulation tests. Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, we have simulation questions for those. And what that means is we require a candidate to demonstrate that they actually know Excel. All of us on our resume say we're proficient in Excel. Well, now we want that candidate to prove it to us. Instead of just doing a multiple choice, or they may or may not get lucky, they actually have to go into our system and show us that they know how to copy and paste and delete a column, whatever that may be. So our simulation questions are very, I would say 80% of my clients use these simulation questions. We also have call center and digital literacy, which are also hot topics, especially for our call center group. The editor, we have, what this is kind of think back to 10, 15 years ago, everybody was using paper and pen still to deploy their tests. And once they kind of moved into doing everything online and using online platforms, they wanted to take their tests with them. And so we created the editor, which allowed them to take their paper test and get it into our system and deploy it through our system, which has been a huge success, and a lot of clients utilize that. And then we also have team scoring. This allows you to take free response questions where there's really no definitive answer, and allow people within your company, whether it's recruiters, a hiring manager, to score those tests. So what kind of the process real quickly is you would deploy a free response question that, may or may not be specific to the job. Like, hey, here's a budget. I think one of the most recent ones I had was they uploaded a budget and the candidate had to kind of maneuver some numbers and then re-upload it. So once that is done, then we can set parameters of what that scoring rubric should look like. A third person, I don't want to say third party, somebody within the company will then view that submission and say, yes, they scored good here, 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 and then they provide an overall score. So it allows you to take those free response questions that don't have definitive answers and assign a score within the system. And so that's eSkill in a nutshell.
Great, thank you so much, Ethan. And actually, as you were going through eSkill, I did see a few questions come in specific to the assessments that eSkill provides. So I will just take the opportunity to ask, what types of behavioral assessments are offered by eSkill?
So eSkill is actually in the process of creating a behavioral assessment that will put everything on one platform. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have it, but that seems to be the number one question from our clients is, they want to couple, and we always encourage this. We always encourage to couple a skills test with the behavioral assessment, but they want everything on one platform, which makes complete sense to us. And so we kind of, took the hints and had started to develop our own behavioral assessment loosely. I would say early 2020 is when that would be done, but I don't want to lock our IT team into any specific date. But that is on the horizon at eSkill.
Great, thank you, Ethan. So just closing out the webinar with just a little note that if you wanted to learn more about iCIMS and eSkill and how the partnership can improve your assessment capabilities, feel free to visit eSkill's product within the iCIMS marketplace. You can find them under Tools to Screen Applicants category, and the iCIMS marketplace is marketplace.icims.com, and you'll be able to learn a lot more about eSkill there, as well as click through that Contact Us button, and you can connect with eSkill directly through that product. With that said, I want to say thank you both to Gaz and Ethan for your conversation and giving us your insight on this discussion. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you for your questions. Again, this was recorded, so it will be sent out very shortly. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out. But thank you guys again.